And welcome back to yet another episode of Raise the Banner podcast. It's episode number 49. We're approaching 50 next week. So that's a little bit of exciting milestone. But for today, it's your three co-hosts as usual lately. JR is doing some work training the last few months, so he's been a little bit of MIA. But myself, Mac Couture, here with Zach Brewitt, as usual, and Benny Ballgame. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing good.
Getting ready to roll? All right. New England Patriots. I mean, we talked last week, Ben, about the idea of them being 1-0, what it would take to get there, and we're here.
Here we are.
Everything we kind of hoped for of what we could realistically saw from this team in Week One. I think that we saw basically all of it. They played a pretty damn clean game. It could certainly be better, I think, especially offensively, but they continued with what was working, and that was the run game. And obviously, they just kind of rode that to a victory because the Bengals couldn't really stop it. But I'll start with you, Zach. What were your overall thoughts on the game versus your expectations, and how you're feeling heading into Week Two because of Week One?
Yeah, I think I was surprised that they come out with a victory. I said before I think they are going to win 9 games this year. I did not have them winning this game, but I think they played well. I think if they can continue this with decent blocking, good run game, limiting turnovers, and just good defense with timely plays, they can win a couple of games this year, especially with, like I said, a good decent quarterback. Liked what I saw from Duggar. I think there was some concern that I had about how the defense would respond without with Gerard Mayo and not Bill Belichick, and it looked like there really wasn't any beats missed. It looked like Duggar made that great play down by the goal line. Gonzalez, for the most part, wrapped up Jamar Chase. There really wasn't a whole lot of highlight plays, at least from the passing game, to speak of. But yeah, I was overall impressed, and if they can keep this up, I think won't be the most like explosive offense, but definitely be some fun games ahead of us.
Fair enough, Ben. How about you?
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised. But like you said, they played a clean game. I suppose realistically, you can only say that the only negative was they had more penalties than Cincinnati, but more plays, more yards, larger time of possession, controlled the line of scrimmage. They outrushed Cincinnati by 100 yards, which I didn't really expect. But they were clean. The offense, certainly was. The offense was what they needed to be in order to win the game, if that makes any sense. The defense did exactly what we would have expected them to. I think, I'll hold my breath a little bit on Christian Gonzalez, only because how much of that was due to the fact that Jamar Chase hasn't been practicing for the last 4 months, and he went through a practice and a walkthrough prior to this game. I mean, obviously, his talent is good enough that he should be able to walk onto a field and be very, very good. I just don't know if he was at 100%. I suppose Gonzalez will get a little bit of a stronger test going up against Seattle this weekend. But obviously he did what he needed to. Was it 3 catches for whatever 17 yards,
14, I think,
something like that. When he was covering Jamar Chase. So good there. Keon White had an absolute whale of a game. I think. This particular game, obviously, the Bengals are notoriously a team that starts out slow. I think they're 1-5 in season openers under Zach Taylor since he took over in 2019. But hey, a win's a win. Didn't really see a ton of wins on the schedule this year. I thought realistically, the floor on this start to the year was like 0-8 in my opinion. I didn't think it was going to happen, and obviously it won't. But obviously they got off to a good start, and if they could start off 2-0, they'll have a leg up on the Jets. They'll have a leg up on one of Miami or Buffalo because they play tomorrow night. So, with a win on Sunday, in the early going, very, very early going, they'll be sitting tied atop the AFC East, assuming the Bills and Dolphins don't tie tomorrow night, which would be par for the course for Thursday Night Football. But I mean, that's a great start for them. I thought they played, like you said, clean. The offense, again, they're not going to win games with that kind of offensive production. Stevenson, for all intents and purposes, had as many yards as Jacoby Brissett. Not necessarily a winning formula, but, they did what they needed to against a team that typically stumbles out of the gate. And, good for them. And hopefully they can ride that momentum and win again on Sunday, and we'll be off and rolling.
Yeah, I mean, for what we could have expected week one, like I said, they kind of showed everything that we kind of hoped for. I know we kind of talked off the record, Ben, and Brissett didn't really do too much, and he needs to do more to win games, going forward. And I think I agree. At the same time, it's not so much that Brissett couldn't do more on Sunday. It's just they simply weren't really asking him to do more. The run game was working, and for as long as the run game is working, they're going to ride that. I know we also talked about the idea of Stevenson getting like 25 carries a game, and if it's realistic or not.
I don't think so.
I think
it's not sustainable.
Yeah, part of it is it's not so much. It's part of it that it's not sustainable, but it's also they're going to naturally probably be playing for behind still more often than not. So
Correct.
Like they're not going to be being able to run the ball that much, even if they want to. That being said, as long as they're in games and the run game is working, they're going to continue to do that. I think Jacoby Brissett was, when we talked about, prior to the season of what Brissett can be as a quarterback for this team, outside of one bonehead throw to the end zone that Henry kind of broke up from being an interception, he was exactly what we kind of said he can be on the good end, which is a quarterback that, isn't going to win you games, but isn't going to lose you games. And so when we look at week one, we saw the defense. I mean, I think we were all a little skeptical of what to expect defensively because, Belichick was obviously the mastermind of the defense for the last 2 decades.
Yep.
But they looked really good.
They did not look like they missed Bill's
at all.
Defensive genius at all. Now, granted, we'll see how that unfolds. But one thing that I thought was really nice, and I'm sure, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder on a topic later on. So I unfortunately missed the game. Both of my kids are cheerleaders for Pop Warner in my town, and they play at 10:30 and noon, and had to take care of house duties, food shopping, what have you. So I didn't get home till 5. So I had to go off of highlights and recaps. But you could tell that this team rallies behind Gerard Mayo and that they absolutely love playing for this guy, and hopefully that's not just, a flash in a pan, lightning in a bottle kind of thing where it's just, he's the new shiny toy because they finally got rid of the 72-year-old grumpy old guy. Like, hopefully that's just not, that it's not just, and I'm sure there will be a little bit of a honeymoon phase, but hopefully that's not like a short-lived thing. That, one of the things we've come to like about Mayo, and this goes back to his days as a player. I know, he came to the league, Matt, when you were probably, not even in school yet.
All right. I'm not that young.
You were
drafted in like 2010.
8. You were 12. You were 12. But so 10th overall pick, I think, in 2008. Some controversy there because teams wanted them to not have that pick over Spygate, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, I mean, 10th overall pick, leader of that defense. I think he led the team and maybe the AFC in tackles his rookie season. He had like 160 tackles, which was insane.
Yeah, he was defensive rookie of the year.
But he was like that as a player. People rallied around him. Like Hightower talked about him because Hightower was young when Mayo was on his way out. Hightower was on his way in. And they, I think partly due to the fact that that's why Hightower is essentially Gerard Mayo's replacement. He's now the inside linebackers coach. So he's very well liked, very well respected. And it was nice to see, he got the Gatorade bath. Now, granted, Bill Belichick started a long, long time ago, long before I was as avid a football fan as I am now. I don't think if you if you turn the clocks back 2024 years, you think Bill Belichick's getting a Gatorade bath for his first career win? I don't know.
No,
But it was nice to see. It was nice to see because, like, you can tell that the players just love playing for Gerard Mayo. They're giving him bro hugs on the sideline. Obviously Kraft gives him the game ball in the post game in the locker room. He at least after one game is living up to that. Like, the players love playing for this guy. That's the phrase I want to use. Like, we were sold on that as why Gerard Mayo was a good fit for this team, and you're seeing that after game one. There was didn't really know what was coming out of camp because you had the Matthew Judon situation, and he's kind of pushing the limits with going on the field and arguing with Mayo. And does Mayo really have control of the roster? But which who knows? But they clearly like playing for this guy, and it was nice to see them rally behind him after they won on Sunday.
Well, it's a breath of fresh air for this team. I mean, a lot of this team is back from the previous years, and a lot of them played under Bill. And you've heard it from Edelman on his podcast. Usually, like, when there was a mistake made, he would rewind and make the whole team watch it and have some remark, and then rewind it again 10 times and have the same remark. It was like people under Bill were scared to make a mistake, where now it feels like Gerard Mayo gives them a little bit more freedom. And yeah, that's probably because he's a much newer coach. And doesn't really want to ruffle feathers yet. We'll see if that continues, but it feels like a much needed breath of fresh air for this team, where players feel like they can go out and make a mistake, can go out and have some learning pains, some growing pains. And also, you talk about, like, we lost a championship coach in Bill Belichick. Well, a lot of these new coaches, yes, they don't have coaching experience, but they've all won championships, whether it be obviously Gerard Mayo won in 2014 with the Patriots. He played in two other ones. Dante Hightower won a bunch. Slater, Troy Brown, the list goes on. So, yes, they lost their head coach championship pedigree, but the coaching experience might not be there, and that's going to be a learning curve. But all of them have won championships and won championships with the Patriots too, which I think is a huge plus for us too going forward.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, pretty accurately, Zach. Is that I think what you're seeing is there was a worry between, like, Belichick was a very, very, very difficult coach to play with, but he was a phenomenal NFL coach. And we're seeing, and again, this is week one, like, it's obviously early, but we're seeing, Mayo being able to maintain that intensity on the field in terms of work ethic, preparation, durability, endurance, getting ready for the season, physicality in training camp. I know Duggar was on 98.5 today, I believe. He said it was probably the most physical training camp he's been a part of since joining the Patriots. All that while, like we just said, is like being more relatable to the players. And so when we talk about, like, 25 years ago or 15 years ago, Belichick's coaching methods worked a lot more than they do now, because this is just a different generation of players. 20 years ago, you could scream at Mike Vrabel and, scream at Teddy Bruschi or Lawyer Malloy or Richard Seymour. You could scream at Brady, and, like, it wasn't. It was more of a yes coach type of mentality. Like, that's what you were taught growing up. Now, when we talk about, like, we heard it with Mac Jones over the years that he was here, he was a why player. He was always asking why. And that's kind of a good example of what we've shifted into with this generation of players. Is they're a little bit more vocal. They're a little bit more willing to speak up against the coaches. They're a little bit more vocal to kind of fight not so much fight the power, but be opposed to the power. So Mayo has certainly, like, what we're seeing so far from Mayo is kind of what we hoped Belichick would have evolved into, at least to a degree, over his final 4 or 5 years. And I think that if he did, he could still be here. I think, not to branch off the topic with Belichick, you see him doing about 12 different media things, and
he's on InstaFace now.
Yeah, he's on InstaFace now, and, like, he's doing Underdog, and he's doing Pat McAfee. he's very, very clearly has, outside of the money aspect of it, because he's probably getting paid a boatload of money, he's very clearly has one thing in mind heading into 2025, and that is to make himself look more relatable and more up with this time.
Yes.
And he's doing that by being, again, on InstaFace. He's being more friendly. He's being more talkative. So he's definitely trying to change that narrative. It's like I said, it's unfortunate that it's taking them that long. So again, we jumped ahead to talking about Mayo and all that, but I do want to branch quickly back into the defense as a whole. I know you brought up Christian Gonzalez, Ben. The best way I've heard about it, I've heard someone talk about it, was Andrew Callahan. He said, going into the season, it was, I really liked what I saw, but it was only 4 games. And he goes, now it's, I really like what I see, but it's only 5 games. So it's like, we're really optimistic about what we've seen from him, but it's okay. Like, we need to see it over an extended period of time to really kind of feel like he is that guy. And you're to finish up my talk, you're in the driver's seat on your take of Defensive Player of the Year already with your Keon White choice. He looks, as good as we kind of. Hey, Tavai looked good too, and I picked White as most improved, so I'll take a little bit. But you're in the front seat, the driver's seat on that, to say the least. He was great on Sunday.
Yeah, he looked really good. Feel free to fill in the gaps. It was 2.5 sacks. I think they credited him with like 5 QB pressures, 3 QB hits, 2 hurries, something to that effect. So, good start for him. Obviously he's on pace for NFL record. I don't know, what's 2.5 times 17, 40 some odd sacks. Obviously he's not going to do that. But yeah, he looked as good as advertised. I know we talked about, turn the clocks back 18 months. We talked about Keon White as a possible draft pick coming out of Georgia Tech in 2023. Liked his upside, probably didn't get a ton of TV time because he played in the ACC, and, Georgia Tech's not one of those top programs. Obviously the ACC is pretty top heavy. So unless you play for Florida State or Clemson, you're not really getting a ton of love in the media. But he was super talented. I liked that they took him in the second round. He was kind of a guy that I thought they could get there if that's what they really felt was a necessary position. But yeah, he's obviously off to a great start. Hopefully he can keep it up. I don't think Seattle has a great offensive line. I know they surrendered 2 safeties. They surrendered to Denver, who, I couldn't even tell you other than Patrick Surtain, who plays on the Denver defense. So maybe he's primed for another big week would be nice. But like what I'm seeing out of him so far, so hopefully we can keep it up.
Yeah, he was. I go back to, I remember pre-draft, we talked about him a little bit. I remember watching a clip. He was standing up along the edge of the line, and he took the running back out of the backfield. And the running back runs a road right up the sideline, going deep into the end zone. And this dude just like step for step going right with him. And like, this guy is like 6'4", 280 pounds. I don't know, whatever he is off the top of my head. Like, just pure muscle, strong, and he's just running step for step with the running back.
Yeah. So quick side tangent. He's listed at 6'5", 285.
Okay, that was pretty good. For
pretty
someone
good
who
guess,
no, I didn't have that like really any clue. That's pretty good.
He moves pretty well for a guy that's 285. Like he's got 100 pounds on me, and I don't move that well.
Did you see the screenshot of him and it's a screenshot of a live play of him and Trent Brown?
Oh, just turns him around.
Yeah, he goes up to Trent Brown like on the play and does like the 2-hand swipe to get around him, and someone screenshots the play, and it's just Trent Brown like in his stance facing away, and Keon White's like still already behind him. It's like, holy shit, did you just get fucking burnt there on that play? No, it makes you feel better about them getting rid of Judon, to say the least. I don't know how much like he played into the factor of getting rid of Judon, but if he can be a guy that consistently rushes the passer and creates real pressure, combine that with we know they're going to get pretty good linebacker play. We know that they're going to get good safety play. And I'll tell you this, John Jones looked phenomenal this weekend. For a guy of his age, still playing at that high of a level is pretty damn impressive. He had that, I don't know if you remember that open field tackle. It was like 3rd and 3, and they threw an out right outside. He came blazing across the line of scrimmage, and it was one of the most impressive open field tackles. Like, I'm just going to put you to the ground type of plays that I've seen in a while. I was very, very surprised to see him still playing at that high of a level. We'll see if it obviously plays out for the rest of the year. But yeah, I mean, the defense as a whole looked.
The defense
great.
wasn't the issue last year, and the defense, at least thus far, it's been a one game, right? We have 16 left to go, but looks like it's not going to be another problem again. The only issue last year was obviously the offense and especially the quarterback play. So as long as you have a decent quarterback who's not going to turn the ball over and can at least manage the game or at least make some throws, fit it into some tight windows, and just, again, take care of the ball, limit turnovers, I think you're going to have a decent team. And you said before, kind of, letting Judon go. I don't know if they knew what they had in Keon White. They knew that obviously he had talent, otherwise they wouldn't take him in the second round. But that definitely limits the blow of letting someone like Judon go. Now Barmore looked like he might be out for the rest of the year. So where are you going to kind of help him or replace him up the middle? We'll see. But the defense, at least last year and this year so far, have not been the issue. So we'll see if we can keep it up.
It looks like they're going to be a little bit more aggressive this year defensively too. I think that is what we'll probably see as the biggest overall change from Belichick's defense to this version of, with Covington and Mayo. All signs point to them being fully prepared like they've always been. So that's definitely good. But I just think Covington as a whole is going to be more aggressive with blitzing and his zone and to man schemes and stuff like that. I think they played 60% zone, 40% man. So it's a decent mix. I think once they get a little bit more comfortable with Gonzalez, if he is really playing at that level, I think you could probably see that flip to maybe 60% man. Ideally, you kind of want to play man if you can. If you have the players to play it, they'll obviously do that. But I mean, it was week one, and I know you, like Ben, you said the Bengals start slow typically week one or early into the season, and no T. Higgins and all that, but that the defense looked as good as we could have hoped, and it really comes down to what the offense is going to be. If Brissett can just be decent, just a decent quarterback, they'll be competitive in a lot of games, and we should have, while a Super Bowl isn't on the horizon, but we should at least have a competitive game-to-game season instead of like last year where we were kind of almost dreading watching Patriots football by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so what were your thoughts, kind of transitioning, I guess, into the offensive side? What were your thoughts on the O-line? I know Chuck's was awful the first two 1.5 drives. He got pulled really quick. Verdarian Lowe took over for him. I thought it looked, better than what we expected. Granted, what we expected was awful. So, I don't think that's very difficult to do. But I thought that it looked good. You guys agree there?
Yeah, I didn't notice them as you said, terrible as we would have thought. I thought there were some plays that, Brissett kind of made with his feet that whether he extended the play or just took off. And I think behind the line of scrimmage, Ramondre made some moves that, maybe he wouldn't have to make if he had a better line. I think I heard on Felger and Maz, they said 118 of his 120 yards came after contact. So that says right there that he was getting hit pretty early on. So, not awful, wasn't great, obviously, but I definitely was impressed with the lowercase I with the offensive line play.
Impressed with the lowercase I. It's the first time I've heard that one. I mean,
Wasn't
yeah,
overly impressed, but
no, I
it
mean,
was fine.
if they can get that game in and game out, and I got it, since he has a solid defense, it's not like they're going to be blazing coming after the quarterback every game.
Mhm.
But if they can be that week to week, that's serviceable. That's doable. That's manageable as an offense. And Alex Van Pelt can work within that. Speaking of him, I thought he ran a pretty good game. Excuse me, he called a pretty good game. The running game was working. Stevenson looked phenomenal, dude. That guy, he has this ability when he's about to go down, he turns himself backwards and backpedals back, and
Yeah.
it like immediately it gets him anywhere between like 2 to 6 more yards constantly.
Well, there
It's
was a play at the end of the game. I think it was to basically seal it, where he did just that. He got hit with within 2 yards, and then just kind of spun and backpedaled into a first down, and that's essentially what
yeah,
was
he
the final
needed.
first down. It
It
was
was like 2nd and 7 or something, and he got 9
yeah,
yards, and he got spun around like a yard into his run,
yeah.
right at the line of scrimmage, and basically backpedaled into it. Yeah, no, I mean Alex Van Pelt, I thought he ran a pretty clean game. They didn't take a lot of shots, which again I think that was a little bit more just kind of how the game played out. They weren't they were leading for most of the game, and at times it was for most of the game it was, or at least about half of it, it was a double 2-score lead. So whatever's working is going to work. So, but I think for a whole, he's putting game one. I think I give him a B plus, A minus. Like the offense looked clean. They didn't have a lot of mistakes. The O line, they didn't have did the O line have more than one penalty? I think they had one on
I don't
Chuck
know off the top of
maybe.
my head.
The O line looks pretty good. So, I mean, I'm pretty damn happy with how things played out on the coaching side. Did you guys have any issues, I guess, with any of the coaching in week one?
No,
No, I think for me, I mean, you always expect a more conservative game plan, especially the first couple of weeks, and now even more so with the 3 preseason games, right? Bill always said that it was an extension of the preseason in September. I think it's even more so now that we only have 3 of those. So I was expecting kind of a more conservative game, especially with you not really knowing the offense yet. I mean, obviously we know what we have in Ramondre, but I also think that comes down to, or I always wonder if that comes down to Van Pelt knowing the Bengals a bit more than just because he came from Cleveland and he played him twice a year. But yeah, I like the game plan. I expected a bit more of a conservative game plan, and we got one. So moving forward, I would like to see a couple more shots, as you said. But overall, I thought yeah, B plus.
Ben, how about you?
Yeah, same. Like you guys said, super conservative, didn't take a ton of risks. It was smart, I think, is a good way. I would say it was an intelligent game plan. Obviously Stevenson ran the ball exceptionally well. It was 25 carries for 120 yards in the touchdown. So if he's doing that well, then you ride the hot hand. That's the smart thing to do. Even if that wasn't necessarily what their plan was going in, if you're having success with it, you just stick with it. I'd like to see them open it up a little bit more. I don't know how soon we'll see that. Brissett's not really the quarterback that you quote unquote open the playbook with. He's just not built to do that. I'd have to take a look. I wonder if they're going to change things up a little bit game plan wise once like Polk. I don't know about Baker. I guess there's some off the field and on the field stuff that is not really going to result in a ton of playing time for him. I guess his dad is really involved, and it's not for a good reason. He like the comparison I made is he kind of like make LeVar Ball look like a hands-off parent. And I guess Bedard was saying that Baker has frying pans for hands. And he's got the whole recent issues going on. He had some issues at UCF. There was a solid number of teams. I want to say there were rumors of up to 12 teams completely took him off the draft board altogether. So I don't know how much you're going to see him, but maybe the more comfortable you get with with Polk, maybe you can start to open up the offense just because of his skill set. Obviously, Douglas is going to do what he does. Thornton, kind of an unknown. I'm not really sure what you're going to get out of him, but it could be because just Brissett's not that guy, and the guys that they probably want to open it up with aren't quite ready yet. And obviously, that's going to be pretty game plan specific. First week, get a feel for things. Obviously, they rolled the hot hand with Stevenson. So, I thought it was a smart game plan that they had. Obviously, nothing exciting, but hopefully that'll change week to week, and they can just attack some weaknesses on the defense. And I'd like to see Brissett throw for a yardage total that the first number has a 2 attached to it. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, we may not see it this week. I'll tell you that. Seattle's got a pretty good secondary, and I believe they're pretty average to mediocre against the run, if I'm not mistaken. So we could see a pretty similar game plan. It will obviously depend on their offense and the Pats defense of how they're playing up against it. I imagine we'll see. I mean, they would put Gonzalez on DK, right? Like,
yeah, I would imagine so. And then whatever combination of you've got,
I put Jones on Lockett and Marcus. John Jones on Lockett and Marcus Jones on JSN.
Yeah, and then of course you've got Markel Wilson. You can kind of mix and match in that case.
Yeah, Alex Austin's got a little bit of size too, to play up against DK if need be. I don't know how much you want that matchup.
I mean, that's true. So
yeah.
I know we're going back to last year, but the Seattle Seahawks ranked 12th in the NFL in defense against the pass. They gave up 3,961 yards. I don't have the yards per game average on that. But they were the second worst team in run defense. They gave up 2,352 yards and 24 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, so I mean, there you go. Like there should be a run heavy team again, and as long as the game is, within a score or two either way, I think they're just going to continue to feed Stevenson.
Yeah,
it may not be good in the long run.
No,
with durability and all that, but
and if you go by and for yards per attempt, they were tied for 5th most at 4.6 yards per carry. Cardinals, Giants, and Bengals were 4.7 yards a carry, and the Broncos gave up 5 yards a carry. Obviously, this is dating back to last year. Hard to really gauge a defense after one game, but yeah. And I don't think a ton. I don't follow the Seahawks. I don't think a ton changed defensively. I don't remember any crazy, off-season signings defensively. Like I said, I don't follow them, but
I think like looking at this game as a whole, they're 3.5-point dogs. When that came out at 3.5, I immediately took the 3.5. I was like, I'll take that number any day after what I watched in week one. They're at home. Seattle's coming across the country. Like, not that it's the biggest deal, out there, but it's a 1:00 game, right? So it's a 1:00 game against Seattle. That means Seattle's playing at 10 a.m. their time. So it's going to be a little bit of a different adjustment for them, obviously comparatively to what they're usually doing. But I look at this game and I think it's extremely winnable. It's extremely winnable. I think Geno Smith is incredibly mediocre. I posted about it this weekend. I think he's going to be benched for Sam Howell by midseason. I just think it's an incredible winnable game. And we talk about, what this team could start with early in the season. If they start 2-0 and the Jets lose to Tennessee on the road this weekend,
definitely not a strong take.
No,
or are you saying if?
I said if.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if. That's a big if too, though.
Yeah, I think that I would give them above a 50% chance to beat Tennessee. That being said, I gave them a much higher chance than they probably should have to beat San Francisco, and they looked pretty bad after about the first half quarter.
Yeah, they had a good opening drive, and then the 49ers shut them down the rest of the way. I mean, granted, the 49ers have a top-rated defense too.
Yeah, so, I think they're in a decent spot to take week 2 for the Jets, but, at Tennessee, like, if they happen to go 0-2 and the Pats are 2-0 heading into week 3, the wheels could fall off for New York pretty damn quickly. That locker room's already a little shaky. Start 0-2. They're going to be already doubting some things. God forbid they fall to 0-3. The Jets fall to 0-3. Their season, I think, could be done.
If they fall to 0-3, they might just fire Salah right then and just say, thanks for all you've done, and we'll see. We'll see you.
Yeah, who you hiring? You putting Nathaniel?
I don't know, but I mean, at that point, you've
Nathaniel
tried this experiment.
That's the thing that thinking about that concept, who are you putting in charge?
Yeah.
The answer is probably Nathaniel Hackett, and because Rodgers will want that, and so if you're Joe Douglas, do you put the guy in charge that was just straight up abysmal the year before in Denver? He was arguably the worst head coach I've seen in a single year than I think I've ever witnessed in a single season, other than maybe I guess
Brandon Staley looked pretty damn good as a coach. He was Hackett was awful.
So yeah, I mean that's obviously a whole different discussion. But if they fall to 0-2, I think the wheels will be shaken for New York. They're gonna start falling into a little bit, I think, of a looking around who's at fault right now. And the Pats host them, right? Are they hosting the Jets week 3?
Hold on, I'll look it up.
I don't remember.
No, they're home. So at least they're at home. It's a Thursday night game, though. So again, either way, if they go in and they lose to the Pats, and the Pats happen to be 3-0, or even again 2-1, and the Jets are 0-3, they could be looking at a free fall of a team. I think you could see Rodgers starting to already check out. I could think you could see issues within the locker room, which there already supposedly and reportedly are. And I think you could see Salah really on the hot seat. You mentioned if they go 0-3, I think they'll give them a little more time, but I mean, it wouldn't be much longer time if they start 2-6, 2-7, maybe even 2-5. I could see them shutting that down. Boy, would I love to see that. The Aaron Rodgers comes to New York. He gets, I don't hope for injuries, but he gets injured year 1, and then it's a disaster year 2.
Blows up in his face, yeah.
But yeah, no. To go back to the Pats, the 2-0 I think is well within reach. I mean, what would you say the odds that they go into week 2 and come out 2-0? I think it's at least 50-50.
I would say 50-50. I mean, obviously, Seattle's a veteran team. They have a new coach now. I know Pete Carroll's still in the building, but he's not the head coach anymore. They feel like what the Patriots are with better skill players on offense. I know it's kind of a weird thing to say, but they've got that high floor, low ceiling quarterback in Geno Smith, which is a lot like what Brissett is. I think Geno Smith's better than Brissett. But, if they can keep DK Metcalf in check, I guess Ken Walker's questionable. He's got an abdomen issue. He might not play this weekend.
Ken Walker's very good. So if he's there, I think he's going to play, but if he's not, that's a huge
loss. But if he's not there, I know Charbonnet's not your prototypical between the tackles runner like they use Walker for. But if Walker's not going to play, you really only have to game plan for DK. In which case, I would say as it stands 50-50. If Walker doesn't play, I'd give the Pats a slight edge, maybe 55% chance to win. But I just think that, Seattle's a more of a veteran team with their quarterback and their skill players. 50-50 I think is a fair spot to be going into Sunday.
How about you, Zach?
No, I agree. I had them winning the game even before the season. I had them losing to Cincy and beating Seattle. I agree, Matt. I don't necessarily love Geno Smith. I think he had a great season a couple years ago. He's been fine ever since. If Kenneth Walker doesn't play, again, I agree, Ben, it gives them not much better chance, but definitely a slight edge. And the defense is back end, strong on the secondary, but I don't know how their linebackers are. They got rid of Jamal Adams. They got rid of, I think they got rid of somebody else in the offseason. And yeah, their run game isn't great, so that's kind of our strength. So kind of going back to what I said earlier, if you can be heavy on the run game, just not turn the ball over and kind of have a decent play at quarterback, I think you have a definite chance. But I wouldn't give them more than 50%, if 55, if there's a good number if Kenneth Walker's hurt.
Yeah, well, Ben, you compared like the teams as a whole. They're probably in a similar ballpark. People are a little bit more upside on Seattle, like you said, because I think Geno might have a little bit of higher floor, and so the overall QB play might be better.
Right.
But Seattle has better weapons, but the Patriots have a better defense. So, like, I think overall they're kind of in a similar tier. I've been very low on Seattle heading into the season. I think I put them in the top 8 record wise in terms of draft picks next year, that they'll end up with the top 8 pick. I don't buy it. I mean, they kind of, they faced Denver last week, who, we just mentioned trying to name defensive players on the Denver Broncos. Like, they're not good. Denver, I think, will have a bottom 3. I think I put money on them to have the worst record in football. Carolina is going to in New York are going to put a heavy fight for that bet, to say the least. But no, I think Seattle's a very mediocre football team. Combine that with, not that we have a experienced head coach, but they don't either.
They hired who'd they hire?
The McDonald, I think, the Ravens DC.
That's right. Mike McDonald. That's right.
Yeah.
So real quick, you have the Seahawks going 7-10, picking outside the top 10 in the draft.
Oh, why did I think I put them less than that?
I just went back and looked because we talked about this like a week ago. We talked about the projected records for each team.
Oh, I thought I had them less. I mean, nevertheless, like 7-10 is a mediocre
7-10 is very much fits the bill. It's a very mediocre team. So I mean, based on record, theoretically, you have them drafting 11th, which is still, that seems kind of par for the course for Seattle.
Yeah, again, like they have, Geno's like a serviceable enough QB, and they have enough weapons on defense and offense, and they have a pretty good secondary to the point where they'll fall into a few wins. Also, the fact that they play Arizona twice. They already just beat, Denver, and I knew that they could absolutely beat the Patriots. So right there is already like they could easily end up with 2 to 3 wins just from those 4 games.
Yeah.
So 7-10. I really thought I had them at 5 to 6 wins, but you obviously pulled up my own prediction.
I was curious. I was like, I wonder where he actually put him, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean they're a good team. Like they're a mid team, not a good team at best. Like, so putting the Pats up against them, like, are the Pats good? No. But if they play like they did last week, it should be a game that they can absolutely win, especially being at home. If this game was in Seattle, I would feel a little bit different, just like overall vibes. But you're going to have, first game back. There's going to be a little bit, for as much as we talked about the idea of like May not starting and how that could put like a really damper on the hype of the season. I think it's obviously less than if May was starting right now, but that week 1 win certainly, I think, put a jolt into the fan base, where you're going to see week 2 this weekend, first home game. There's going to be a little bit of energy, I think, in that stadium, where people are a little bit excited. They see maybe a vision for this team, and they say, maybe Kraft got it right with Mayo, and this team kind of potentially really is on the rise. Do you think we see Baker back, or by back I mean make his debut this weekend, or do you see him kind of being on the bench for at least the next few weeks?
I mean, it's hard to say how long. I mean, I would say it's likely, barring an injury, over the next 2 days. and it's really only a day because they're not going to do a hard practice Friday. I mean, unless something happens where Polk or
Was Booty or Boutte? Was he active? He was active last week, right?
yes, he was active, but he didn't get a snap. He was on the bench the entire game.
Okay, so I think I could see them, unless they planned on playing him, keeping him inactive type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially because you figure, what are they going to do? Now, granted, it's not an even comparison because one's on the roster, one's on the practice squad, but where they didn't even elevate Jalen Rieger, you figure, if Booty or I'm trying to think who would have been directly ahead of Kayshon Boutte on the depth chart. Thornton,
Probably
Osborne, Douglas, Polk.
Probably Osborne or Thornton theoretically.
Well, you figure Boutte was probably the fifth wide receiver.
Oh yeah. So the other four, like Douglas, I guess, is your one.
Yeah. So the only four that saw the field, and I don't know, this isn't any particular order, but it was Osborne, Polk, Thornton, and Douglas were the four that actually played. And Polk got the fewest snaps, if I'm not mistaken, and he was over 50%. I think he had 34 offensive snaps, which was like 51, 52%. I can pull up, Mike Reese tweets it out every Monday morning. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, if you only play 4 wide receivers, they're going to end up all over.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless something goes wrong with Kayshon Boutte or, if they don't have any faith in Jalen Rieger coming up off the practice squad, that's kind of how I see the only way that Baker is active. Even still, I don't even know if he sees the field, because I don't know if they trust him to catch the ball, let alone have the right attitude.
That's part of the thing is I don't think, at least at this moment, they'll make him active unless they plan on getting him a decent amount of snaps. Obviously, I'm not saying unless.
But in that case, like Boutte was active and got 0 snaps.
I know, but when we talk about the fact that he has the off-field issues, has potential attitude issues, he's supposedly not even lining up correctly in some scenarios.
Like he doesn't fully understand his routes or his position on the field.
All those things. I think that they, in terms of if I'm the head coach here and I'm talking about trying to deal with a player like this, I'm saying I'm not even going to give him the satisfaction of suiting up unless I'm going to actually play him. I would agree. I'm not going to give him that active, get your shoulder pads on, get your jersey on, and then just sit on the bench. That might be even a little bit more degrading, I guess, to him in terms of hyping him up and then bringing him back down. But I think unless that they plan to play him, he's going to continue to be inactive. So I don't think we'll really see him until at least week maybe 4 or 5. And that's if he continues to improve. And it's tough because I think we all agree that he has legit upside. He's a go-getter of a wide receiver, as I like to call it, a dog of a wide receiver. Something that the Patriots have desperately needed over the last handful of years is though that dog mentality. He brought the whole get your popcorn ready, that type of shit. But until he shows consistency, I don't think they're going to make him active, and they shouldn't really, unless they're going to play him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I could see him being active if this was more an attitude issue versus a football problem. I think the attitude issue is kind of just the straw that breaks the camel's back. But if he doesn't know where he's supposed to stand on routes, he's not running the right routes all the time, and he's having issues catching the ball. I mean, obviously, we saw him lay out. What was that game? Was it the Panther? No. What was the second game for the Pats in the preseason? Giants?
Eagles, I think, right?
Eagles, thank you. He tried to, granted, he's Superman's to try to catch this ball from Drake May, and he doesn't, as the referees would say, he didn't survive the ground. Ball pops out when he lands on the ground. But I mean, so you can see that the skill is there, but this to me feels like it's more so a technical football issue, and that the fact that on top of that he had the ticket issue, and his dad seems to be a little bit of a crazy person. Like those things seem to kind of be
Well, then
secondary.
he comes out in the media like the day after and was like, "I don't regret anything."
Right.
It's like, dude, what do you do? Like, have an ounce of common sense.
Right. Like just read the room a little bit.
Yeah, it's not like Mayo's going to be Bill Belichick-esque in that type of scenario, but like dude, like read the goddamn room and how to handle yourself as a young player. I'm hoping he grows out of it, like with age, and he gets better, and he's kind of realizes like, if I want to make it, I need to put my head down and play. But I mean, at this point, like I said, I don't think they'll play him unless they feel he's ready. I think week one was probably a good combination of, I don't think he's necessarily ready and he's a fucking idiot and we want to kind of make an example. If he's not active week two here, it's a clear sign that they just don't think he's ready as a player. And so, obviously we'll kind of see how that plays out. I personally would like to see him out there, even if he's not 100%, in the sense of, get him. I mean, great on Tyquan Thornton for possibly improving, but, I would like to see him out there instead of Tyquan Thornton on the field. So it's a tough situation, but we'll see how kind of it all plays out, to say the least. But I do wanted to just branch into more of the locker room things to finish up here. Obviously, we saw Mayo get the game ball. What are your overall thoughts on? I know we kind of branched on this a little bit already, but how Mayo's overall week one control of the team versus your expectations, and did week one change things for you, or was it kind of what you expected from Mayo heading into week one?
I think for me, it like I was a bit surprised at how much of control he has over the locker room. You heard afterwards he was saying, when they made a mistake, like, "Oh, run for the hills," like run, like you're alluding to how Bill used to make them run the hill back in Foxborough. So I was surprised at how much control he has over the locker room, and not that he has, like the stranglehold and kind of everyone's holding their breath to mess up the way Bill did. But I was very surprised and very impressed at kind of how he handled himself, how the people and the players responded to him, and it seems like I said, they responded well. They respond like they actually like and enjoy playing for him. He comes from the same pedigree. He's only really seen and played under one coach, and that's Bill Belichick. So of course, his playing style or his coaching style is going to be pretty similar. So I wouldn't say it changed all that much, but I was definitely surprised at like how much respect he feels like he already has in the locker room, and how much the players like actually enjoy playing for him. So I was again, go back to the impressed with the lowercase I.
Fair enough. Ben, how about you?
I don't know if surprised is the word I would choose. I would say, so obviously we were sold on this idea that he's a player's coach, that he relates well to the guys. He's young enough. He just turned 38 this year. That he's young enough where he can have those connections to players. And I mean, he's been with the team. This is the beginning of his fifth season, right? He was 4 years as the inside linebackers coach / defensive game planner, whatever you want to call it. And so I think especially on the defensive side, you saw it with guys like Jabril Peppers was pretty hyped up after the game. He was with Mayo at the end when they were winding the clock down. It was nice to see that it felt like he had a good camaraderie with the offense just as much as he did with the defense. That was the unknown, right? So obviously he spends all this time, especially with the linebackers, so they know what they're getting with Mayo. That's probably not changing. Granted, he's not defensively game planning every day like he would have been the last 4 years, but it was nice to see that he could still make those connections, especially with younger guys on the offense and the newer guys that weren't here for the last 4 years or may have been here and spent less time with Mayo because he was on the defensive side of the ball. And obviously this is what we this is obviously what we were sold, so to speak. When Mayo said, like, we're turning the reins over to Gerard Mayo, you saw that this is one of the reasons, one of the bigger selling points for why they have him here is everyone likes him. He has a ton of respect, which is nice to see. I would say it was refreshing, I guess is a good way of putting it. He brings a different attitude to the sideline. Reminds me a lot of like early season, like early Patriots era Belichick. Where, he was a little bit more animated on the sideline. He cracked a smile every now and again, as opposed to not doing it at all towards the end of his tenure. And maybe it's a little bit of, because, like I said earlier, Gerard Mayo is kind of the shiny new toy. Maybe it's a little bit like that for me because we're so used to seeing Belichick on the sideline basically looking like Steven Seagal. No emotion. He's just stone-faced for everything. Same face, doesn't matter. Patriots score a touchdown, and Bill Belichick, he's got his arms folded. He pulls the pencil out. He just writes a few notes down, and then he goes to the sideline to, that's not who Gerard Mayo is. So it's nice. It's refreshing to see something different, and maybe that's part of, the impression that I'm, the way that I've been impressed with Mayo lately, and especially after the game on Sunday. But again, this is what we expected out of Mayo. And so I hope it continues, and I hope it's just not like that, flash in a pan early season stuff, and that this is what we're going to get. Because if it's like this a lot, I think, good coaching can win games when bad coaching would lose them. We've seen that with plenty of other teams. When we look at Arthur Smith in Tennessee, guy couldn't game plan an offense with that kind of talent. Like, you can see what bad coaching can do to teams. And so, if he's a good coach and, maybe they're in a much better spot early on than we would have thought, given what we kind of expected the team would be going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like you said, we kind of expected this. And, when they were going through what we thought was going to be a coaching search, I remember, my top option was Mike Vrabel. I thought that he was the perfect fit for what they wanted to, rebuild here. But I was very strong in saying that Gerard Mayo was my number two. Probably for the most part, like, the only reason I think I had Vrabel ahead of Mayo was because Vrabel had proven that he can do it already.
Right. He already had the experience as a head coach.
Yeah, and not that he did amazing things in Tennessee, but I thought for what he was given to work with, I thought he was a very good coach in Tennessee.
Never lost a bill.
And the fact that he didn't get a head coaching job is just blasphemous, but he certainly will probably this next cycle. Nevertheless, I was very happy with the hiring overall of Mayo. It was a little bit obviously different with Holtcraft having the succession plan and all that, and the planned takeover of Belichick. That sounds wrong. Plan succession of Belichick, not the planned takeover.
the coup, the Patriots coup of 2024.
No, yeah, I'm very happy with what we've seen so far. Going later into camp, I was a little wary with how things were playing out. With the whole Judon situation, and I was kind of like, just him. He talks a little too much. He's a little too not so much opinionated, but he gives too much to the media at times and talks over himself. And I think he's kind of said things that he probably shouldn't have said, and it backfired on his own words. But week one came, and everything that we hoped for week one, whether they won or lost, as in terms of Mayo, what did we want to see? We wanted to see a team that was ready to play, a team that didn't make dumb mistakes, and a team that played hard. And we saw a team that was ready to play, that didn't make dumb mistakes, and that played hard. And so when you win, and we talk about the whole Gatorade bath for him, at the end, it was, all right, that's nice, type of, thing to see. But he looks to be early on again what we hope for in terms of the hard, on-field coach, but a guy that can connect with the players. And I posted about it right after they won. It was like, you could clearly see that this is a team that that wants to play and likes to play for their head coach. And a few people obviously took that as like I'm taking a shot at Belichick, and it really wasn't much of a shot at Belichick. But in the same way, like I understand why you take it that way. But it is what it is, right? It, they seem to very much like and respect playing for Gerard Mayo so far. We'll see how things turn out if they go through a tough stretch. Obviously, when you generally kind of show your true colors when things go bad. So we'll see how things play out if they start going through some struggles, which I'm sure they will at times throughout this season.
Yep.
But that's like I kind of to sum up the whole week one, that was everything we could have hoped for. Like in being realistic in terms from what we saw from the coach.
I was hoping for more yards out of Jacoby, but
yeah, but like in terms of general realistic.
Yeah, like if you had told me that we would have no turnover, we'd win the turnover battle, and on top of having no turnovers, although we should have had one. There was one Jacoby Brissett pass that was, I mean, the football gods were shining down on us with that not being picked off.
Yeah, that was just
nonetheless like win the turnover battle, control the line of scrimmage, win time of possession. I think they had 5-6 more minutes of time possession compared to Cincinnati. And that we would outgain them on the ground by 100 yards and win 16-10. I'd say, okay, yeah, I'd take that 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I mean, not even so much just the win. Like, I'll take a win is any win, but just like in an overall, like, we talked about the running game. It was just working, and so that's why they kind of pushed it. And Brissett didn't throw for a lot of yards, but just in terms of overall what we hope to see from this team, win or lose, I think we saw.
Yeah.
And so, like the wheels could fall off this week and it looks like a disaster and we're back to like being a little bit worried. But week one, I think we saw exactly what we hoped for. So
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I kind of expected to be here today and kind of saying, oh shit, we're in for a long season. But I
still think we're in for a long season. It's just I think we're delaying that. We got a chance to delay that reaction for at least a week.
Yeah, but even long season, like I'm not saying like that we're going to be a playoff contender or anything like that. If this team is just a competitive football team week in and week out, they may end up, 5-12 still. But like if they're they had 7 1-score losses last year. Like if that happens again, but it ends up with 5, 6, maybe 7 wins. All things considering, depending on the whole how May situation plays out throughout the year, it could be a much more enjoyable, I guess you could use the word, season to deal with. For the
any season over last year is going to be more enjoyable. I think if you can have,
by December,
I'll take 5 wins, and we're
by
good.
December, it was dreaded to watch the Patriots. Like I'm never gonna not watch the Patriots, but like, December games where we're just sitting there like, I don't really even want to watch this.
Like when you lose 6-0 to LA, 10-6 to Indy, 10-7 here, you're just sitting there like
losing to the Giants. I was like, what am I doing? Spending my Sundays doing this, watching this game? Like,
you were like voluntarily torturing yourself at the end of last season. So. Not to set the bar that low, but if December comes and we're not feeling that way, I guess that's a win, a little bit of a bonus.
It is.
Ideally,
when you hit rock bottom, you can only go up, and I'm pretty sure last year was rock bottom.
I hope it is.
Yeah,
I can't go any further down. So.
I would say if last year's not rock bottom, the only thing that would have made last year rock bottom is if they won less than 4 games. Because I don't think there's any way they would be less watchable. It just would have been we would have had the number 2 or the number 1 or number 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. In terms of like vibes and like feelings of the team's future,
that couldn't have gone any lower than
that. Like that was rock bottom. I agree there. Yeah, and obviously like come December, they could be, I don't know, 4-8 or 4-9 or 3-10, but like, okay, Drake May's making his debut, and like December could be exciting for a whole entire different reason.
Week 14, baby. Week 14.
Yeah. So that's a whole different discussion that we don't need to get into. But all right, I do want to finish this up with state your takes. I hope you have yours ready to go. Ben, you want to start us off?
Yeah. So I'm gonna go pretty specific and say the Patriots will win this weekend by a score of 23-16.
All right. It's a 7-point win. All right. Hey, I will only accept this state your take if you put at least $3 on the exact score outcome bet.
I'll have to look into that. I don't know if you can do that on DraftKings.
I'll you can Venmo me and I'll send you the money if you can do it on FanDuel.
All right.
You'll win a shit ton of money, even on $3 if it's the exact score.
So I think Brissett goes for, he'll get his first touchdown. It could be a big running game. I don't know if, I guess, so looking at the numbers, Tariq Woolen had tied for the highest, well, I should say lowest, but best passer rating against this past week with a 2.8 passer rating allowed against Bo Nix. Granted, Bo Nix is, I think, garbage, but if he's lining up on the other side, tough sledding, but I'll take the Pats to go 2-0 by a final score of 23-16.
All right, Zach, how about you?
Yeah, you'll notice I was quiet during a recent or another earlier segment because the thunder was stolen a little bit, but I have it that Javon Baker will not finish the season with the team. I think it's for the same reason we talked about earlier.
Wow.
He's if he's got the talent, I think, but if his hands aren't there, he doesn't have his head in the game, both on the field or off it. And now his dad apparently is LeVar Ball 2.0. Like at some point, Gerard Mayo is going to have to, win the locker room and show him who's boss and really, put his foot down here. So I don't think he's going to let someone come in and kind of run the locker room the way he doesn't want it to be. So my state your take is that Javon Baker does not finish the season with the Patriots.
All right. It really comes down to with Baker is if he starts causing like chaos. Sorry, my dog must have saw something outside and proceeded to start barking. But,
squirrel.
Yeah. It really will come down to if like he starts causing like real issues in the locker room. If it's not just like him and Mayo like having the, I don't want to say battle, but disagreements, it's one thing. But if he starts spreading it across the locker room, I mean, I could see the Pats suspending him type of thing. I think being off the team as a whole, that's bold.
Zach, I like bold.
But I respect
the take. I like it.
I respect the take. For myself, I'm going a little bit more of an optimistic view for this weekend, and being more player specific. And it's that Ramondre Stevenson runs for over 130 yards rushing this weekend.
All right.
That will result in Ben again next week complaining that Jacoby Brissett didn't throw for enough yards, but that's all right because I think it will result in a Patriots victory. But I think Ramondre Stevenson specifically is in for another very big game. If you have him on daily fantasy, or if you do daily fantasy, pick him up. If you have him in fantasy, you better start him. Not that you should be anyways, but I think he's in for another big week. 130 yards rushing, maybe even another 20 to 30, in the pass game. Knowing this now, he will have like 100 yards rushing and 30 yards receiving, and I will be wrong. But he'll still pass that total yard marker. But that's what I'm going to go with. I think he's in for a very, very fruitful week 2 against the Seattle Seahawks, and hopefully we're here next week and they're 2-0, and we're talking about how are they playoff contenders or something ridiculous like that.
I like it.
All right. That's gonna wrap it up for this week. Like I said, hopefully the Patriots are 2-0 at this time. This time next week we should have a pretty good idea if the Red Sox have any shot in the world of making a playoff run anymore. They're like 3 or 4 games back. If they don't make a run over the next 7 to 10 days, their time will have expired. But any final words? Goodbye to the fans, the listeners.
No,
That's it.
New renewed sense of excitement around this team, around Gerard Mayo, and I think legitimately for the first time in probably, let's see, a year and a half, 2 years maybe. I think the future is bright in New England.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
All right,
Going into week 2, happy about it.
Yeah, until next week. Hopefully the Patriots are 2-0, and the Red Sox, I don't know, are still somewhat relevant, somewhat worth watching the end of September games.
Doubt it, but we'll see.
Yeah, cheers to 2-0 and to the Patriots continuing this good start to the season, and we're all smiling again next week. So, all right, we're Raise the Banner. Until next week, thanks for listening. Take care.
Have a good night.
See you guys.